They thought he was just a lost old man. Weak hands, silent eyes, no one to defend him. Inside that police station, laughter echoed as corrupt officers mocked him. "Are you lost, old man?" They pushed his chair. They insulted his dignity. But what they didn't know was that silence isn't weakness. Every scar on his body carried a war story. Every breath held discipline. And every second, history was watching. Then the doors opened. Boots hit the floor. 50 soldiers marched in, perfectly aligned. The room froze. The laughter died. Fear replaced arrogance. Because the old man they bullied was the man who once commanded them all. This is not just a story. This is a warning. Never underestimate the quiet ones. The old man stood quietly at the entrance of the police station, gripping his worn-out cap with trembling fingers. His clothes were clean but old. His eyes carried years of pain, discipline, and stories no one asked about. He had come for help, nothing more. But the moment the corrupt officers noticed him, smirks appeared on their faces. "Hey, old man," one officer laughed, leaning back in his chair. "Are you lost?" The others chuckled. The old man stepped forward slowly, his voice calm. "I was told to report here." That was enough to entertain them. One officer pushed a chair toward him aggressively. "Sit, before you fall." Laughter echoed through the station. They saw weakness. They saw age. They saw someone powerless. What they didn't see was the soldier hidden beneath the silence. As the old man sat down, his hands rested calmly on the table. Hands that once held rifles. Hands that once saluted fallen brothers. One officer leaned closer, whispering mockingly, "You know this isn't a retirement home, right?" The old man didn't respond. Silence made them bolder. Another officer circled him like prey. Probably some forgotten veteran thinking he's important. Forgotten. That word echoed in the old man's mind. Forgotten nights in freezing trenches. Forgotten screams of wounded comrades. Forgotten missions that saved cities. Yet he said nothing. Minutes passed. Then suddenly, a deep, heavy sound broke the air. Boots. Marching boots. The station doors swung open. One officer frowned. "What the hell is this?" The sound grew louder. Perfect rhythm. Perfect discipline. The old man slowly lifted his head. And for the first time, a slight smile appeared. The marching stopped. 50 soldiers stood inside the police station, boots aligned, back straight, eyes forward. The entire room went silent. The corrupt officers froze. The one who was laughing earlier slowly straightened his uniform, his face turning pale. "No, this can't be right," he whispered. From the center of the formation, a senior officer stepped forward. His medals reflected the light. His presence alone demanded respect. He looked around the station once. Then his eyes locked onto the old man, sitting quietly at the table. Time seemed to stop. The senior officer raised his hand sharply. "Salute." All 50 soldiers followed instantly. The sound of boots snapping together echoed like thunder. The police officers stood stunned, mouths open, hands shaking. The old man slowly stood up. Not weak, not confused. Strong, controlled, calm. He returned the salute with precision, the kind only years of command could teach. One officer stuttered. "Yes, sir." "Who is he?" The senior officer's voice was firm, cold, and loud enough to shake the walls. "This man," he said, "is Colonel Ahmed Khan." The room gasped. "He led us through battles you'll never understand. He trained divisions. He buried his men with his own hands." The corrupt officers exchanged terrified glances. The one who mocked him earlier took a step back. We didn't know." Colonel Ahmed finally spoke. His voice wasn't angry. That made it worse. "I didn't come here for respect," he said calmly. "I came here for justice." The senior officer turned sharply toward the police. "Is this how you treat citizens? Is this how you treat those who serve this country?" No one answered. Sweat dripped down their faces. The officer who pushed the chair tried to speak. "Yes, sir, it was just a misunderstanding." The colonel took one slow step forward. "Disrespect," he said quietly, "is never a misunderstanding." The senior officer pulled out a file. Complaints. Witness statements. Internal reports. He placed it on the table. "We've been watching this station for months." Shock hit the officers like a bullet. The laughter from earlier felt like a distant nightmare. Colonel Ahmed looked at the man who called him lost. Power, he said, is not given to humiliate. It is given to protect. The officer couldn't meet his eyes. Outside, sirens began to wail. Military police vehicles arrived. One by one, the corrupt officers were escorted out. Handcuffs clicked. The same officers who laughed now begged. The colonel didn't watch. He adjusted his cap and turned toward the soldiers. Stand down, he ordered. They obeyed instantly. As he walked toward the exit, the senior officer walked beside him. Sir, he said softly, they will face court-martial and criminal charges. The colonel nodded. At the door, he stopped, turned back, looked at the empty chair where he was mocked, and said one final sentence. Never forget, the quiet ones carry the loudest histories. He walked out. The soldiers followed, and the police station was left with silence and shame. The police station remained silent long after the soldiers left. The echo of boots still lingered in the air, like a ghost reminding everyone of what had just happened. The chairs were empty. The laughter was gone. Only shame remained. News spread fast. Within hours, videos from nearby CCTV cameras leaked online. Clips of officers mocking an old man. Clips of soldiers saluting him. Clips of handcuffs clicking. The internet exploded. People shared the video with one sentence. Respect the quiet ones. Media vans surrounded the station by evening. Reporters shouted questions. How long was this corruption going on? Who protected these officers? How many people were humiliated like this old man? Inside a secure military office, Colonel Ahmed Khan sat quietly, sipping tea. No cameras, no interviews, no speeches, just silence. A young soldier stood nervously in front of him. Sir, permission to speak? Granted, the colonel replied. The soldier hesitated. Why didn't you tell them who you were from the start? The colonel smiled faintly. Because, he said, I wanted to see who they were before they knew who I was. The soldier nodded, understanding slowly forming in his eyes. The colonel leaned back. I didn't fight wars to demand respect, he continued. I fought so others wouldn't have to. Across the city, the arrested officers sat in separate holding cells. No jokes now. No arrogance. One officer stared at the wall, replaying the moment he laughed. Another buried his face in his hands. The one who pushed the chair whispered repeatedly, if only I had known, but it was too late. Investigations uncovered everything. Bribes, fake cases, destroyed evidence, threatened civilians. Dozens of past victims came forward. Men, women, even teenagers. All had one thing in common. They were treated as nothing. Until now, at the military headquarters, the senior officer briefed Colonel Ahmed. Sir, because of today, multiple corrupt stations are under review. The colonel nodded. Good, he said calmly. Let this be the beginning. That night, alone in his room, the colonel opened an old wooden box. Inside were medals, letters, photographs of young soldiers smiling, some who never came back. He touched one photo gently. Your sacrifice still protects this country, he whispered. The world called him a hero again. But he knew the truth. Heroes don't announce themselves. They endure. Days later, the court hearings began. The same officers who once walked proudly into the station now stood in chains. Their uniforms replaced by prison clothes. Their authority reduced to numbers. The judge watched the footage carefully. Every insult, every shove, every laugh. Then he spoke. Power without accountability, the judge said, is violence. The verdict was swift. Dismissal from service. Prison sentences. Lifetime bans. Outside the courthouse, citizens clapped. Some cried. An old woman whispered. For the first time, justice. Colonel Ahmed did not attend. He was back where he felt most comfortable, training young recruits. A new batch stood in formation. Nervous, proud, unaware of how heavy responsibility truly is. The colonel walked slowly in front of them. Strength, he said, is not in your fists. They listened. It's in restraint. It's in character. It's in how you treat the weakest person in the room. He stopped in front of one recruit. If an old man walks into your station, he said firmly, you stand up. The recruits answered in unison. Yes, sir. That night, the colonel walked alone through the city. No guards, no medals, just a man and his conscience. A child bumped into him accidentally. "I'm sorry, uncle," the boy said quickly. The colonel smiled and knelt. "It's okay," he said softly. The child ran away laughing. The colonel stood there for a moment, looking up at the sky. He had commanded thousands, faced death, changed history. Yet this small moment of kindness was what mattered most. The next morning, a headline appeared. "Silence speaks loudest. The day arrogance met honor." People share it worldwide, but the colonel never read it. He was already gone. Back to silence. Back to purpose. Back to being forgotten. Exactly how true heroes prefer it. Weeks passed, but the impact of that single day refused to fade. Across the country, police stations changed in quiet ways. Chairs were offered to the elderly. Voices lowered. Eyes watched more carefully. Not because of fear, but because of awareness. The story of the silent old man became a lesson taught in academies. Not officially written in manuals, but whispered among officers who understood. Never judge too quickly. Never mock the quiet ones. Never forget who built the ground you stand on. Colonel Ahmed Khan returned to his small home on the edge of the city. No guards, no medals on the wall, just a simple house and a garden he cared for himself. Every morning, he watered the plants slowly, each drop deliberate, each moment peaceful. A neighbor once asked him, "Uncle, weren't you scared that day at the police station?" The colonel smiled. "Fear," he replied, "is only for those who have something to hide." One evening, a young police officer knocked on his door. Nervous, respectful. "Sir," the officer said, "I was transferred after what happened. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry." The colonel invited him in. They sat quietly. "You know," the colonel said gently, "uniforms don't make men dangerous." The officer listened. "Character does," the colonel finished. Tears filled the officer's eyes. "I promise," he said, "I'll do better." The colonel nodded. "That's all a country ever needs." As the officer left, the colonel looked at the sunset. He thought about all the times he stood at borders, staring into the same sky, unsure if he would live to see another day. Back then, he fought enemies with guns. Now, the real battle was against arrogance, ego, and forgetfulness. And this battle was far more dangerous. Months later, a letter arrived. Inside was a photo of new recruits standing in formation. On the back, a handwritten note. "We stand because you taught us how." The colonel placed the photo back into his wooden box. He didn't smile. He didn't cry. He simply nodded, as if saying, "Mission accomplished," because real service never ends. It only changes form.